What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 44. My name is Victor Vasquez. Thank you so much for coming and listening to another episode where we talk about a new movie, we review it, we give our thoughts, pros and cons, and then we dive into that question, which is the film timeless? Can I see myself personally rewatching this movie over and over and over again? Because we've had a lot of different classic movies. Everybody's got their top 5 or top 10 movies that they enjoy watching. And so, there's times where after that first viewing, it just kind of clicks, like movies like Jurassic Park or The Dark Knight or Inception, those types of films that just kind of grab your attention. And so on this week's episode, we are going to be talking about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. That is right. This, I guess, it seems like it's going to be split into 2 different movies, maybe 3, not quite sure. But this Mission Impossible is, again, the 7th entry into the franchise. I was super excited to watch this movie because of the fact of my excitement after watching Fallout. That was the last Mission Impossible movie that came out before this one. And it was super exciting. You got to see Henry Cavill as the villain. You got to see different types of sequences and just crazy stunts that Tom Cruise continues to perform on his own. And he just keeps setting the bar higher and higher. And Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 was probably going to be no exception because they kept hyping up this motorcycle stunt where he just basically went off of a huge mountain or cliff. It was nuts. I saw that video, and you could see it on YouTube of the behind the scenes of it. It was just incredible, and it did a really great job to just hype you up in regards to what kind of craziness was going to happen in this movie. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the questions and some of my thoughts in regards to Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. I only have 2 in regards to what I was thinking about before I went to the theaters to watch this movie. First question is in regards to this being a part 1, right? What is the cliffhanger going to be, or how is it going to land for the audience? Especially in regards to some of the great films in the past that have had different types of cliffhangers, right? You have Infinity War, where Thanos collects the 6 Infinity Stones and he basically snaps and wipes half of all existence. Great cliffhanger, and it kind of gives you that feeling of like, what the heck is going to happen to wrap this story up in Endgame. Just this year, you had Across the Spider-Verse, which is basically just a part or a chapter before we lead into Beyond the Spider-Verse, then closes out Miles Morales' story. And so now we have another one here where we have Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. How is this film basically going to set up the stakes and the story where Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, was going to try to, again, either save a specific type of a situation, save the world, whatever it was going to be. How would they, explain the story and then land it in a nice little cliffhanger? Or would there even be a cliffhanger? Would it just be a complete story and just kind of a little tease as to what could come next after this specific film? So that was my number 1 question: is how would they end this film? I'll be honest, and if you haven't listened to my Across the Spider-Verse review, definitely check it out. I'll put a link in this actual video as well. For me, Across the Spider-Verse, it could have had a great cliffhanger ending. Instead, they kind of landed it with more of like a hopeful or optimistic, like, hey, here's a little tease as to what's coming. I didn't really kind of vibe with that type of an ending. It didn't really hit for me. For other people, they probably thought it was amazing. But for me, again, I would have much preferred a darker, kind of a different type of tone where it's not so hopeful, right? We don't know if our hero is going to be able to save the day. Obviously, in these types of stories, our heroes do end up saving the day, but I always like to kind of leave it in a somber note. Again, gonna probably repeat myself, but Infinity War, our heroes, the Avengers, they lose. And so it's a great way to kind of leave it off and then have you looking forward to, well, how do they come back, right? And so that's the only thing that I'm kind of looking forward to this movie, is that what is going to be this cliffhanger for Ethan Hunt and his team, and how would it end off, right? Would it end off in that somber, dark note, or would it kind of end off on a happy note in that case? Only time will tell until we watch the movie as well. Second question that I had was, because it is a part 1, does that mean that, maybe the cliffhanger that we just talked about, does it involve the death of one of the team members of Ethan Hunt? he's had his team help him out in various different situations. Ilsa Faust, who is one of the other spies from MI6, played by Rebecca Ferguson. Then you have Benji Dunn, played by Simon Pegg, one of the technical expertise as well, and always just kind of like that comedic relief. And then you have Luther, played by Ving Rhames, who, again, he always has the coding, he always has the right technology to kind of help Ethan out in any kind of situation. And so, of these kind of members, right, this crew that has been with him for so many of his different missions, would one of them die in this movie? Is that the epic cliffhanger that we leave off on? Is there, are one of them captured in some type of a way? Something I feel is going to happen to one of these specific characters. And so that's always kind of in my mind. Again, I could be way off, but just in my thought about what could be a very impactful ending or something that can impact the audience as they're watching this film in regards to, well, we know that Ethan Hunt isn't going to die. He's really the main character of this franchise. So it's got to be somebody that he loves, or somebody that really is revolving around him. And it's got to be somebody from his team as well. So we'll see. Again, that's just a little prediction before we watch the movie to see what happens in regards to one of the team members of Ethan Hunt's IMF group as well. All right, great. Well, guys, that's really what I had in regards to some of the questions before I watched the movie. Let's go ahead and dive in to my overall thoughts. I'll jump into some pros and cons, and whether I, again, recommend watching this movie in the theaters as well. I went to go watch it. We actually got an early fan screening, and so we got to watch it on July 10th on a Monday. Went to a Dolby Cinema, and I'm really happy I went to go watch it in Dolby Cinema because this movie was just, from an action perspective, was super fun to watch. Definitely because of Tom Cruise and his involvement of like trying to get cinema to grow even further. He made this movie specifically for like IMAX, for Dolby Cinema, for the theaters. And you can see that, with the different action sequences, with the different types of set pieces that they created, the cities that they visit in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. You could just see it again. The one of my favorite things was, and I'll kind of lead into my pros, but my first pro was just like the sound design of everything that was going on, the chaos that would kind of ensue, whether there was car chase scenes, whether there was like a helicopter or an airplane passing by. Our seats in the theater would like rumble and shake like that, and I love it. I love it when the theater's kind of sound design is kind of making that additional experience at the theater even better, right? There's many times where I go to AMC and watch movies, and sometimes, it's loud, but it's not really kind of, shaking my seat, or it's not really giving me any other type of sense that it's making my experience of watching this film on the big screen even better. And this film actually, again, the sound design was just really spot on when it comes to all the different types of crashes, the action, the choreography that was done. Again, it was really well done. And that's going to be, again, one of my first pros is just the sound design that they were able to set up for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. Another pro that I had for this film was actually the relationships between Ethan Hunt and a new character that gets introduced in Grace. Haley Atwell plays Grace. She is this thief that ends up, again, crossing paths with Ethan Hunt and his team. And then obviously, as you can tell, as the story goes along, it ends up being a part of this mission in some way. I really like the chemistry that Ethan Hunt and Grace had throughout the film. That's probably one of my favorite things that I kind of saw on the big screen as well. And obviously, the different types of interactions that Ethan will have with Benji or with Luther or with Ilsa, you can kind of see that chemistry kind of flowing. And so really enjoyed that overall as well. And then finally, I got to say the action scenes. Again, I mentioned it before, this movie was made for the big screen, and its main and big highlight is to show you some crazy action movie chaos. Again, you have chase scenes that are occurring in the city of Rome. You have a kind of like a desert type of a vibe in Abu Dhabi. And then you have, again, these different types of set pieces that just make it feel very real, like you actually are in these different types of cities, traveling with this IMF team and Ethan Hunt. And so, again, the action was really cool. Again, just different areas that they were able to kind of pull off. Again, I think the biggest highlight was them highlighting that motorcycle stunt that Tom Cruise was able to pull off. If you haven't seen that behind the scenes video, definitely recommend to check it out, just because of the fact that it's just how this guy's risking his life to perform these stunts. But hey, it adds much more to the movie as well. Those were, again, some of my pros in regards to the movie. Again, the sound design was great. The chemistry between the members of the team, whether it was Ethan Hunt or Grace or Benji or Luther. Again, just a lot of great connections between these characters. And then obviously the action that was occurring throughout the film. A lot of adrenaline, a lot of action and energy kind of flowing throughout the movie as well. Actually, one more pro that I actually had about the movie was the villain. This will be a spoiler warning for anybody that has not seen Mission Impossible. The villain in this film is actually not a person. It is not a country. It is not a terrorist group. In this movie, it is actually an AI. So a sentient AI, and it's called the Entity. It's kind of ridiculous, but I actually really liked it. I went to go watch it with my brother and my girlfriend, and they were a little bit not as hot on the idea in regards to having it be kind of like an AI. Me, on the other hand, I thought it was pretty cool. It was different. I feel like we're always kind of pinning it on like hey, Ethan Hunt is facing this bad person, or Ethan Hunt is facing this bad person. And so for the first time, it's really like a different type of a villain. This time, again, it's like an AI that's basically corrupt. Its code has gone way off, and now it's basically able to access and really go into any specific server system in the entire world. And so it becomes a threat that can impact the entire world altogether. And it's really up to Ethan Hunt to try to track it down and try to destroy it. But again, I just thought that it was a really cool concept to have it not just be a typical villain, a male or a female. Rather, have it kind of be a type of an entity or sentient AI. Kind of like Ultron in a way in the Avengers movies, before he turns into an actual physical robot. So those are my pros overall about Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. Some of the cons that I had in regards to the movie were, I actually felt the movie was too long. And I'm pretty on board with long movies. Again, one of my favorite movies, and a timeless one for me, is Avengers Endgame. That one clocks in at 3 hours. The Batman clocks in almost at 3 hours. I love that movie. John Wick, who just came out this year as well. Great movie. Also almost clocks in at 3 hours. And that one, again, did not feel long at all. This one, however, though, I felt like there was way too much. I don't even know how to describe it. There's like, it's not like unnecessary things. It just felt like we didn't need this kind of detail sometimes. Like, again, I love when Tom Cruise is running in any of his films. It looks super heroic. It looks funny. It looks just like he's just so, majestic when he's running. But there was 3 separate scenes where he's running either on top of a trail or a path in an airport. There's one where he's running in the streets of Rome, and then there's another one where he is running, in a different setting as well. Maybe we could have kept it at one specific running scene. There was just a lot of different scenes where it just felt like it took too long. One of them was, speaking of the action sequences, before Tom Cruise actually jumps off with his motorcycle off of a mountain cliff. That whole setup, it took a very long time for him to kind of get there. And I completely understand, again, they're trying to hype up and build up that scene and the tension. But I felt like it took way too long, that by the time it actually happened, it didn't really hit for me. I was like, yeah, it's okay. The behind the scenes, making of that stunt was obviously a little bit more exciting, because you're seeing it play it so many times. And here, you're seeing it. It finishes very quickly, and then it's over. And it just didn't hit really well for me. But yeah, I felt like there was a lot of different pieces where they could have definitely cut different action sequences. Another one, spoiler warning again for anybody that has not seen it, but there's a specific part where Ethan and Grace are having to get out of a train that's about to crash, basically, and fall off of a railway. And they have to basically run through each specific tram as they fall off the cliff. I thought the concept again was cool. You've seen this before, but they had to kind of escape out of 2 or 3 different trams, and I thought it was just too much. I was like, you could have just shown one very thrilling and exciting tram escape, and before they were saved by a different character, and that would have been enough for me. Instead, they show them struggle and go through one tramway, and then they go through another tramway, and then they go through a third tramway, and then they're saved. And again, it just felt like it was just dragging on a little too much. Definitely going to be in the minority on this one, because I'm pretty sure, just by seeing some of the early reviews, a lot of people, again, love the action, love everything that's going on. To me, it just felt a little too long. And again, it's surprising because I love long movies. I'm all for it, especially when the story kind of keeps you in that specific mode of like, I'm completely enthralled, which I think is a perfect segue to my second con, which is the story to me was okay. It wasn't as exciting, or it didn't keep me captivated as other Mission Impossible movies. Mission Impossible Fallout is still one of my favorite action movies. It just kind of keeps you going all the way through the entire story. There's nothing that kind of slows you down. Here, there's multiple different parts where they kind of explain what the entity is as an AI, and then it kind of tells you like, hey, there's something that this key unlocks. But they don't mention what the key does or what it unlocks. And then at the end, they kind of describe like, hey, this could open, it could be an opening to this, but we don't know. And then at the end, they reveal that, yes, it does open the source code for the entity. It was just very weird. Like they kind of wanted to make a mystery, but then they kind of tell you what it is, and then they kind of make it a mystery again, and at the end they kind of reveal, no, it was what we mentioned before at the beginning of the movie. And so it just kind of felt very off. It kind of confusing. Certain characters, you see like I'll give you a specific example. You have, I think, Eugene Kittredge, I think, is one of the directors of this IMF group, and at first he seems like he's, again, he wants the key, and then, at the next he instructs Ethan Hunt to try to find the key, and then at the end he's probably the one that's involved in buying the key, and then at the end he's telling Ethan Hunt to save the world, and so it just kind of felt very odd. And again, this is just only one viewing for me, watching it. Maybe if I watch it a second time, the story might make a little bit more sense. But it just felt like certain characters, like, what they were kind of doing and how the story kind of portrayed them just didn't make sense. And so, again, that's just a personal nitpick and con on my side. It didn't take me out of the movie completely, but it was something that I was kind of thinking of, like, well, so what are we looking for like that? I get we're looking for a key, and the key might unlock this. Oh, okay, yeah, it does unlock this. So they already mentioned that before. So it wasn't really like a good shock as to like, oh man, this is what it opens, or this is what it does. It was kind of all kind of revealed, but then, I don't know if they were trying to do like a reverse psychology, like, yes, it is, no, it's not. Like, it was just, that was just my mind. I just got kind of confused as to what they were trying to portray in that story as well. But those are really my cons. Again, I enjoyed the movie. I liked it. I definitely did not love the movie. It's not the best Mission Impossible for me. To me, Fallout is still top tier in regards to the franchise. But definitely would recommend, if you guys are into action movies, if you are into, Tom Cruise and all these different types of stunts that he performs, I would definitely recommend you guys watch it. Try to watch it like in a big theater, like IMAX or Dolby Cinema, just because I think you'll feel the experience of, again, the sound and the visuals that are occurring as you see him kind of, jumping from place to place, going through different types of trams and trains, flying off of a cliff. It just looks visually, it looks very cool. As for the story, again, to me, it didn't, it was okay. It didn't really, again, it kept me captivated for a while. But it wasn't anything that kind of blew me away. I was like, oh man, that was incredible. I got to watch it again. I didn't get that feeling after coming out of the theater. But again, if you're into action and you love those types of movies, definitely recommend you go watch it. Again, if you're not that big of a fan of it and you're okay on Tom Cruise movies, definitely you can wait for this on streaming services as well. All right, awesome. Well, now that I've kind of talked about my overall thoughts about Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, I want to jump into my favorite performance that happened in the movie. So far, I think for me, my favorite performance had to come down to Tom Cruise or Haley Atwell's character. I thought again, I mentioned that as one of my pros, but both had a really good chemistry together. At least for me, I thought they kind of played off each other very well. If I had to choose one, and I try to put myself in that position, I think I got to go Tom Cruise. The man is just, again, he knows this character so well. He's played it for so many years. I think since like 1990 something. I'm not going to even try to guess which year, but it's been well over 20 years that he's played this character. And so it's cool to just kind of see him not only try to make it something different, but also how he's able to then feed off the energy of other new characters. In this case, again, Haley Atwell's character, Grace, how he's able to kind of interact with her. And it's almost like he's kind of showing her the ropes because, again, she's not a spy. She's a professional thief. But like I mentioned before, she's getting involved in these situations, in these missions. And so she's witnessing what Ethan is doing, driving through the streets of Rome, going through a specific train and trying to make it onto it after you dive off of a cliff. She's seeing all this, and so she's kind of getting prepped and viewing that. But again, he's always so magnetic when you see him on screen. Tom Cruise is, and so it's always such a delight to kind of see him kind of perform. And it's just always so cool. He's always in control, even when he's kind of like frustrated and like kind of frantic. You could just see that he's still trying to kind of control everything as Ethan Hunt. Definitely loved his performance. Again, I gotta say, honorable mention is still got to be Haley Atwell. I thought she was a really cool introduction into this. I'm really looking forward to hopefully seeing more of her in Dead Reckoning Part 2. They definitely set it up that way. So hopefully she does come back. But I gotta say that my favorite performance was Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt. Okay, now I want to dive into my favorite scene or moment in the movie. No surprise, it's going to be an action sequence. But my favorite scene was actually a fight between Tom Cruise playing Ethan Hunt. And he ended up facing off against this character that they introduced, a villain called Paris, played by Pom Klementieff. Many of you, if you guys watch the movie, will know her as Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Pom was really cool in this film. She didn't have a lot of dialogue, but she was basically one of the villains in the movie trying to track down Ethan Hunt. She ends up facing off against Ethan Hunt, but then there's another kind of, guard there that's trying to take him out. What's cool about this scene, though, is it's basically a 1-on-2. It's a mismatch for Ethan Hunt. It's Paris and some other goon against Ethan Hunt. But I love that they basically put them all in a small slither of a street or an alley. And it's so claustrophobic. And they filmed it really well, where you just feel like you have no space. And Ethan Hunt's having to basically fight off both of these characters in a small alleyway that only fits one person. And he's basically having to fight both of them off, trying to escape. And he ends up basically knocking both of them out and then escaping. But just the way they filmed that scene, the way that they were able to kind of do the choreography in such a small space, I thought was so cool. It was so different, considering that we see a lot of different types of action sequences and choreography where, some of the people that are fighting have a lot of space. Sometimes it's a hallway that, obviously still feels claustrophobic. This has to be maybe the smallest space where you have seen a 1-on-2 fight go on in a movie. But I loved it. I thought it was a great and genius idea to pull off, because you don't typically see films kind of go into such a small space where that the camera work has to be spot on in order to make it work. And they were able to pull off. So great job to the camera team and being able to, again, pull off such a great action sequence in the movie. Well, everybody, we have gotten to the last segment of the Timeless Movie Podcast, and this is where we're going to answer the question of, is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 timeless? For me, personally, I do not think this movie is a timeless watch. I had very high hopes. I was really excited to watch this movie just because, again, after watching Fallout, it got me really excited as to what other type of mission or what would happen to Ethan Hunt in this series. And knowing it was a part 1, meaning that there's going to be a second part that would hopefully follow up into a bigger story, it got me really pumped as to like, okay, what the heck is going to happen? What's the threat this time? But again, after watching it and some of the things that I had mentioned before and early on, kind of correlate to why it's not a timeless movie for me to watch. Again, although it is a lot of action and a lot of things that are packed into it, even comparing it to some of the action movies that have come out this year, I actually don't even think this is better than John Wick 4. To me, John Wick 4 had all the adrenaline that you needed from a movie. It was just as long, but it didn't feel slow. There wasn't parts where it felt like this took too long, or this didn't make sense. Everything kind of just flowed very simply for that John Wick 4 movie. Again, here, it felt like at the beginning, it started off really well. It introduced you to Grace. It introduced you to what this threat might be. It introduced you to what Ethan needed to focus on, which is like these keys that he needed to end up basically bypass this entity and hopefully end up controlling it and destroying it. It started off really well, but then it kind of just proceeds to, again, show off a lot of stuff that might not make sense. It kind of slows down, then it picks up, and then slows down again. So it didn't really feel like I had a really good flow. And so when I feel a movie, again, and for me personally as well, when I feel that a movie is long, that already tells me that I'm like, oh, okay, the next time I watch it, I'm just going to be looking forward to, well, I can't wait to get to this part because I'm already kind of tired of this or bored of this. So I want to watch something else in the movie, like a different scene or a different part or in a different act. And I never want to feel that way, right? I want to love watching a movie and enjoy it so much that I want to watch every single part or every single scene because it matters to me. Now, again, this is just my personal opinion. For me, it is not a timeless film. But again, you guys, after you watch it, you guys can let me know, hey, no, this is definitely a timeless movie. And I definitely want to hear that. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. If you do have a chance and you do end up watching it in theaters, go ahead down below in the comments. Let me know what you thought about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Did you think it was the best action movie this year? Was it better than John Wick 4? Is it a timeless movie for you? And also, where do you rank it with the other Mission Impossible movies? Is it the number one Mission Impossible movie for you? Or is there another one that you actually enjoy as well? Definitely want to connect with you guys, and that way we can kind of interact and talk a little bit more about this film. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for staying this long and listening. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 44 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Appreciate everybody coming back and listening. Make sure you check out next week's episode because we'll be covering a new movie and determining whether it is a timeless watch or not. All right, everybody. Thanks so much and have a great rest of your week.